Introductions and Prologue to Uller Uprising. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ralph Snelson. Uller Uprising by Henry Beam Piper. Introduction by John F. Carr. With the publication of this novel, Uller Uprising, all of H. Beam Piper's previously published science fiction is now available in Ace editions. Uller Uprising was first published in 1952 in a Twain science fiction triplet, a hardbound collection of 3 thematically connected novels. The other 2 were Judith Merril's Daughters of Earth and Fletcher Pratt's The Long View. A year later, it appeared in the February and March issues of Space Science Fiction, edited by Lester Del Rey. The magazine version, which was abridged by about a third, was believed by many bibliographers to be the only version, and as a novella it was too short for book publication. The Twain version had a small print run, and is so scarce that few people have seen it. Those bibliographers who knew of its existence assumed that both versions of Uller were the same. It was through a telephone conversation with Charles N. Brown, publisher of Locus and correspondent with Piper, that I learned about the Twain edition and its greater length. Brown allowed me to photocopy his original, for which we owe him a debt of thanks, because the Twain version is not only novel length, but far better than the shorter one that appeared in Space Science Fiction. Probably the most surprising and interesting thing about the Twain edition is the essay that forms the introduction to that volume and is reprinted here. The essay is by Dr. John D. Clark, an eminent scientist of the 40s and 50s, and one of the discoverers of sulfa, the first miracle drug. It describes in great detail the planetary system of the star Beta Hydrae, and gives the names of those planets, Uller and Niflheim. A publisher's note states that Clark's essay was written first, and given to the contributors as background material for a novel they would then write. The fans of H. Beam Piper seem to owe a great debt to Dr. Clark. Uller Uprising became the foundation of Piper's monumental Terro-Human Future History, the first story where we encounter the Terran Federation. In it we learn about Odin, the planet that will one day be the capital of the first galactic empire, and humble Niflheim, which in more decadent times will become a common expletive, a word meaning hell. This is also where Piper introduced and explained the atomic era dating system, AE. Uller Uprising is set in the early years of the Terran Federation's expansion and exploration, an epoch of great vitality. In The Edge of the Knife, Piper compares this time of discovery to the Spanish conquest of the Americas. This feeling of vigor and unlimited possibilities runs through all the early Federation stories, Uller Uprising, Omnilingual, Nodsense, When in the Course, and to a lesser degree in the late Federation novels Little Fuzzy, Fuzzy Sapiens, and Fuzzies and Other People. See Federation by H. Beam Piper for a good overview of this period. In these stories we see Terro-Humans at their best and at their worst, individual heroism and bravery in the face of grave danger in Uller Uprising, Federation law and justice in Little Fuzzy and its sequels, and in Omnilingual and Nodsense, the spirit of science and rational inquiry. Yet we also see colonial exploitation and subjugation in Uller Uprising and Umful in the Sky, the greed and corruption of chartered land companies in Little Fuzzy, and political corruption in 4-Day Planet. These stories are about a living Terro-Human culture, not a utopia. It was Piper's attention to historical realism and his use of actual historical models that have helped his work to pass the test of time and have led to his becoming the favorite of a new generation of readers more than 25 years after his death. Uller Uprising is the story of a confrontation between a human overlord and alien servants, with an ironic twist at the end. Like most of Piper's best work, Uller Uprising is modeled after an actual event in human history. In this case, the Sepoy Mutiny, a Bengal uprising in British-held India, brought about when rumors were spread to native soldiers that cartridges being issued by the British were coated with animal fat. The rebellion quickly spread throughout India and led to the massacre of the British colony at Cawnpore. Piper's novel is not a mere retelling of the Indian Mutiny, but rather an analysis of an historical event applied to a similar situation in the far future. Like many philosophers and social theorists before him, Piper attempted to chart the progress of humankind. Unlike most, however, he did not envision or try to create a system of ethics that would end all of humanity's problems. The best he could offer was his model of the self-reliant man, the man who actually knows what has to be done and how to do it, and he's going to go right ahead and do it, without holding a dozen conferences and round-table discussions, and giving everybody a fair and equal chance to foul things up for him. Piper brought his own ideas and judgments about society and history into all of his work, but they appear most clearly in his Taro-Human Future History. While not everyone will agree with Piper's theories, they give his work a bite that most popular fiction lacks. One cannot read Piper complacently, and one can often find a wry insight sandwiched in between the blood and thunder. Other future histories may span more centuries, or better illuminate the highlights of several decades, but until a rival is created with more historical depth and attention to detail, H. Beam Piper's Taro-Human Future History will stand as the Bayeux Tapestry of science fiction histories. In many ways, certainly during his lifetime, Piper was the most underrated of the John W. Campbell's astounding writers. He was probably also the most Campbellian. His Self-Reliant Man is almost a mirror image of Campbell's Citizen. Piper died a bitter man, a failure in his own mind. Shortly before his death, he believed he could no longer earn a living as a writer without charity from his friends or the state. Now he's the cornerstone of Ace Books. Had he lived long enough to finish another half-dozen books, he would have been among the science fiction greats of the '60s. But maybe he does know, after all. Jerry Pournelle, who was very much influenced by Piper, and in many ways considers himself Beam's spiritual descendant, and incidentally was John W. Campbell's last major discovery, has said that sometimes when he's gotten down a particularly good line, he can hear the old man chuckle and whisper, "Attaboy." End of introduction number 1. Introduction by Dr. John D. Clark. The Silicon World. 1. The Star and its most important planet. The planet is named Uller. It seems that when interstellar travel was developed, the names of Greek gods had been used up, so those of Norse gods were used. It is the second planet of the star Beta Hydrae, right angles 0:23, declension -77:32, G0, solar type star, of approximately the same size as Sol, distance from Earth 21 light years. Uller revolves around it in a nearly circular orbit, at a distance of 100 million miles, making it a little colder than Earth. A year is of the approximate length of that on Earth. A day lasts 26 hours. The axis of Uller is in the same plane as the orbit, so that at a certain time of the year the North Pole is pointed directly at the sun, while at the opposite end of the orbit it points directly away. The result is highly exaggerated seasons. At the poles the temperature runs from 120 degrees Celsius to a low of -80 degrees Celsius. At the equator it remains not far from 10 degrees Celsius all year round. Strong winds blow during the summer and winter, from the hot to the cold pole. Few winds